Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's lovely to have you. You join us here live for round 10 of the Invictus Racing League. We are heading to Mexico today, so certainly going to be some exciting racing. I'm personally quite exciting. Hopefully the chat is as well. Be sure to give us your feedback in chat, your predictions about what's going to happen during the race, any potential winners you may see, any potential losers, as well as any incidents you foresee happening. Give us your thoughts down in the chat. We'd love to hear it from you. Will Cameron bottle it yet again? Good question. In fact, speaking of the drivers, that is our perfect segue to actually talk about the drivers and about their standing as they are currently in the season. So right out the gate, EMEA continues their very strong lead. Their lead was actually broken by none other than Cameron last race. So for those who missed it, the Jeddah Corniche circuit, very fast, very good track in terms of battling, as we saw right down to the very end. It was a photo finish, and really I recommend after this stream you go back and recap that race if you haven't seen it already. That was some intense action, some nail biter, a real nail biter of a race, and I cannot implore you hard enough to go and see that after this stream. However, to get back to the standings, we have EMEA continuing to hold a strong lead, getting almost podiums every single race, with the exception of Bahrain. They have got a podium every single race. And really, has to be said that they have been one of the most consistent drivers on the grid, getting 6 podiums on the trot, or 6 P1s. 6 P1s on the trot, which really is a momentous achievement considering the level of play that we have seen in this league thus far. Just wanted to check, make sure that we are in the lobby and ready to go on the back end. But yes, to come off of EMEA here, we have, let's say, Cass in a second place, actually getting a DNF for the last race. And we did, while it was very exciting, we really did see some excitement down to the very end. We also saw a few upsets. So a few drivers that we'd expected to finish on good pace, to finish on good positions, either didn't make it. We had some real standout winners. Liam, for example, in the AlphaTauri, a big winner from the Jeddah race last round, coming out with a 3rd place, where they've usually been used to seeing more of the backmarker positions in the league thus far, or having been DNF'd a few times. It really is nice to see that they finally got a win out of the race. And it's almost like in Baku that this race is more one of attrition than it is one of outright pace, as we saw a lot of DNFs, a lot of scuffles and upsets. In fact, 4 DNFs and multiple safety cars throughout the race. Unfortunately, this was plagued by technical issues, but they have now been resolved internally, and testing has come out positive, so we should not see any more issues of the sort tonight. But to go through the driver standings, we have Amir leading with 105 points, which is a good 38 points to the next driver down, which is Cass and the Aston Martin. Hopefully we see them having a good performance this evening. And as well as that, hopefully Lenny also gets another good performance. A very strong performer in the McLaren suit, getting consistently high positioning for the majority of the races they've been in, and really just showing some strong pace overall, and hopefully we can see that form continue. Cameron, of course, the brilliant photo finish that we saw last round, and what a battle right to the very end. A true game of strategy of DRS, just playing a little bit of DRS chicken right to the very end, maximizing and making it matter where it counted. Of course, getting their first win of the season and putting them in 4th place in the Drivers' Championship. Of course, we have Jasper next, and 44 points. So really, a lot of the points condensed up at the top of the field, and then you definitely start to see it tail off towards the rear end. However, there is still a lot of drivers in very close contention with each other, because you have drivers like Jasper, Yeslad, Frederick, Joshua, Adam, all in that area of contending with each other in terms of points. It's not that much of a spread between them all, and they really are sort of fighting tooth and nail. It is still anyone's season in terms of that mid pack, it's anyone's season. But to go through the last few drivers in our standings, we have, say, Morwell in the Aston Martin. Hasn't really been here as of late, which is definitely a shame and definitely something that you want to see change. We have, I say, Coop, who is actually not going to be attending this race as they will be hosting the F2. Will be helping out in the F2 League, so will not be racing tonight, unfortunately. We have Rin, say, one of the 2 new challengers for the Williams team. And really just that Williams team, we need to talk about that Williams team, because they absolutely came in and showed their performance. They really showed their hand, to say, completely unknown quantities, and came right out the gate swinging with the amount of pace that they had on tap. It really was some exciting stuff, really good racing from really everyone involved, to say, the front pack, the mid pack. We saw a lot of excitement. Liam is watched change my mind. Well, we have yet to see. They did get their best performance last round, so I wouldn't be so quick to draw conclusions. But rounding out the rear end of the table, we have, say, Taylor, Matt, Marcus, and Jelly, rounding out the back end of the championship table. Let's take a quick look at the Constructor Standings before we move on to the quali session itself. So, of course, leading first place is Mercedes, 141 points. The majority of that from Emir, really just carrying the majority of that constructor's effort. Although McLaren is not too far behind. So the consistent performances of both Lenny and Cameron, getting good points across the board throughout the season so far, has really netted them quite well, as they are the only one within striking distance of the Mercedes team right now in terms of constructors. And with a few more races to go yet, say we have 6 more races including tonight, it is still anyone's game who could take the championship. Say, who is it going to be? The standout performances of Emir, who's going to brute force the team to victory, or is it going to be the consistent fast performances of the McLaren taking them through? But following on from that, as a distinguished gap behind, we have Aston Martin, Cass and Morwell taking a decent middle ground between themselves and 4th place, with a fair points deficit, because we have a very heated battle for 4th in the constructors between AlphaTauri and Red Bull. So battle of the companion teams going on right about now. It is really a big battle of the companion teams, as the sister team is 1 point ahead of their senior. And I'm not sure how the team dynamics go between the two, but usually you tend to see the senior team a little bit higher than their junior, than their respective junior. So AlphaTauri definitely making some waves in the Constructors' Championship, that is for sure. But following on from that, in a battle for 6th place, we have Alfa Romeo and Ferrari. And again, we are seeing that sort of flipped script. We're seeing that the sister team, or generally regarded as the junior team, is actually doing better than their senior counterparts. So whether that's through standout performances or just consistent performances and consistent drivers, we are seeing a real upset to what you would otherwise expect in a constructor's grid for a standard season. So definitely don't go anywhere. I say with 6 rounds to go, this constructors championship could heat up. This can go any which way at this stage. And with the back markers of Alpine, Williams and Haas, I say in rough contention with each other, roughly in the same area, because Williams being a brand new entry and being as of last race a completely unproven entity, but quickly showed their pace. Can they carry that through to get some good headway throughout the rest of the season? Maybe claw up some points from when they joined in the halfway break in the Monaco debacle. But with that all being said, let me know your predictions. Let me know your predictions, those in chat. Be sure to give us a heads up about who you think will win the race. Any potential drama, any potential battles that we might be seeing, any driver that you personally peg to win. Would be great to hear all the opinions from across the chat and across the paddock as to who is going to take it. Personally, for me as caster, I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of the battles back at the front of the grid. So if we get back to the Drivers' Championship table, I'm looking to see some good performances from the Williams suit, as they really had, unfortunately, one of their drivers did have to retire mid-race, and thus are not on the standings board. But I am definitely looking forward to see what Williams' team can do fully unrestricted as we go through the Mexico circuit, the circuit Hermanos Rodriguez. And let it be known, and this is just a sort of technical information, there have been warns for excessive corner cuts where the game would otherwise not detect, and so the game will not always detect corner cuts. It will not always detect where some drivers are pushing the limits and going outside of track limits. So the complex turns 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6, and 13, 12, 13, and 14, drivers have been warned for excessive cutting, and as such will be reprimanded more harshly. But if you do want to keep up with the action before we head into the qualifying session, which should be taking place in just a few minutes here, if you do want to keep up with the action, be sure to subscribe to our channel if you're liking the coverage so far throughout the season, and be sure to hit us up with a like on this stream. And as well, if you don't like it, if there's something you want to see improve, be sure to let us know in the chat, and we can definitely take that into consideration. Or better yet, join us on our website, or have a chat, have a conversation with us on Twitter, where we can have some good discussions and improve the series, as well as keeping up with it as we get ready for the racing now. And there we go. That is just official word from the stewards, who have come in, thankfully, to say that one of the drivers is currently running late and will join on later during the qualifying. So you may see a slight change of grid, or the grid will look larger as we go through the qualifying session. That is intended. That is just where one of our drivers is running late due to other commitments. But with that all being said, if you enjoy me as a caster, so my name is Sappy, also known as Ben. If you enjoy me as a caster, be sure to head over to my Twitch, where I cast regularly for the Forza scene, for the professional Forza scene, and generally take part in some some league racing also. But with that all being said and done, let's take ourselves finally to the qualifying session. I'm certainly excited and certainly looking forward to this. And really, as we hop in, let's get driving. But here we are. As we get ourselves set up, looks to be a very, very wet track. Now, this is probably one of the first times that we've actually seen a wet course here in the season thus far. You can see all the drivers opting to go onto the intermediates, all things. Despite the track looking very wet, almost soaking, you can see the puddles forming in the pit lane. And as we hide our UI and get ourselves ready to go, so I will be your commentator for this evening, Sappytron, aka Ben. Pleasure to be here as always, and let's get into this. So first off, we are going to hop in and see just what these drivers can do. We're going to hop on with them here first thing, and you can see immediately just how different of an experience, where all of these drivers have possibly got too used to dry running. You can see with Romeo was locking up those tyres there in the first couple of corners, just how quickly they're having to adjust, how much they're having to change their driving style to suit. And there goes a big, big lockup. And while this is the outlap and it is a little bit about getting the heat into their tyres, it is still very telling just how different the grip levels are, potentially from what a lot of these drivers are getting used to, or have otherwise experienced in the past. But as we see the drivers head round and quickly try and get their running in as quickly as possible before the track gets any wetter, potentially the strategy of the drivers is get an intermediate lap before the track continues to get rained on and they have to switch to full wets. Just get some laps out as soon as they can, because if the track dries up, then that is of course brilliant for the teams, for the drivers, but at the same time, if the track gets wetter, then they need to set their pace right out of the gate. They need to set their pace as soon as they can. But here we go. We're going to hop on with Emir right now, who's just starting their proper lap, the actual flying lap. We're going to hop on board with them now as we see just what they can do. And here we go. It's a lock up. You can see navigating turns 1 to 3 quite nicely. It's a good use of the track limits there, although still being careful of the steward's warnings. And really, it's just a case of managing those tyres and managing the grip levels in order to stay competitive. But so far, looking very strong for the Mercedes driver. So here we go, taking a quick hop in with Joshua. And as all of the other drivers are officially now on their outlap, you can see the levels of understeer that's caused by the low levels of traction. You can just see how much the drivers are really having to yield and almost fight the car to get it to where they want it to go, where they're so used to sticky grip, sticky tyres, tarmac, and as you can see right there, so yes, lads having a bit of an issue and having to abandon their run. And as we hop in with Emir, going to quickly see how well they are doing as they come around the last corner. What pace are we looking to see? It's going to be a 125 opener. So good setting the pace in the Mercedes. Very well done. And as we see some of the other drivers start to roll in now, Liam going to get an invalidation. Joshua going to retire from the session, which is definitely unfortunate. Which is a shame. They are not going to be able to set a lap time. They will likely be starting from the back of the grid. Not what you want to be seeing. Here we go, as we see, say Lenny is going to set a 125.9, so very good pace from them. Are we going to see that pace being mirrored from their McLaren teammate? It's not looking great. A little bit of lag there, potentially having some connection issues from the second McLaren there, but it is going to be a 125.6, so good pace despite the seemingly network issues. Flyboy is going to get a 126 flat. Good pace overall thus far. So you've got Rin over here going now to set their fastest lap and get a good intermediate time in before the track starts to get any wetter. We're really just running in, although that being said, yielding quite heavily, potentially looking to go for a flyer next lap and try to get the tyres heated up as much as they possibly could. Here we go, hopping on with the Yeslad now, the only Alfa Romeo driver on the grid thus far. And it is though a mystery. Oh, getting a little bit tail happy there. Got to be very careful on the throttle with this try, and almost done updating. Ah, I see. Well, it'll be great to have you, Jay. Always great to have you. There we go. While it was an invalidation, it was a 127. So it's good. It's almost good that they've got the mistakes out of their system, because they do not want to be messing up on their actual flyer. Here we go, we're going to see just how much they react to. Big lock up from the Alfa Romeo there. All of these drivers locking up really heavily going through turns 1 to 3. So it's the approach. It's probably the hardest part of the circuit in these kind of conditions, because you really have to perfectly judge. And as we see, we get an invalidation there. Liam's going to set a 126.1, so very good pace there. Rin with a 137.2. Not the pace we're looking for, but again, like we saw, they are probably looking for getting the flyer this lap round as opposed to the last one. And Yeslad is going to currently have an invalidation. But taking a look at the driver behind him, Cass, one of the favourites so far this season in terms of overall performance. Really looking forward to seeing what pace that they can muster here. We really haven't seen the drivers face this kind of challenge as well, where we've seen, as we said before, all the drivers have been in dry running, and Mir doing very well with a 124.4, really setting the pace. First driver to break into that region and setting the pace for the circuit. This is certainly a new challenge for our drivers, as we've previously been entirely in dry weather running in this league so far. So I'm very personally curious to see how the drivers respond to this kind of challenge. But there we go, Cass with a 125.3, setting a very good pace in that Aston Martin. It's not quite on the level that we would like, and as we come to the halfway point of the qualifying session thus far, it is looking good. It's quite a narrow, with the exception of Rin, who I believe is coming to the end point of their lap now. Oh, in fact, they are not. They went on, potentially had an invalidation of their lap prior, so they're going for another flyer here. But doing very well to control their car going through and not get a lock-up into the first corner. Doing very well there. Going to see what's the commotion is on track. Looks to be the McLaren, as they've lost control on the start-finish straight. Not sure why they're in the grass over there. Really don't know what's happened. But certainly not a place that you want to be on this track. And I'm sure that that would have compromised the otherwise good run that they would have had, given that you need a lot of momentum from the prior corners. But as we take a quick look at the field, as we see Rin coming through, snaking it very elegantly through the second sector, keeping a good line, keeping a good grasp on the grip of the car, and really just showing the prowess. And as they are almost 10 seconds up, so can they carry that improvement through and round off the lap to potentially land in the 1 minute 25 territory? If they can get in the 124s, they are in a very good position, because so far, with the exception of Cass, who just went and set a 124.9, those two cars are the only ones, and it's going to be a 124.7. What a brilliant lap from the Williams there, getting second place on the board thus far. Very good performance, and that is everyone. A very tight spread. It's only 1.2 seconds between the fastest and slowest runners, which is really quite interesting. A very narrow spread, and given that we are on equal performance, this really is the ultimate test of driver skill, how much you can accommodate for the changing grip levels and different characteristics of the car, because the car behaves very differently, and you have to set up very differently as well when it comes to wet weather running. Ooh, bit of a drift there. Definitely getting it a little bit sideways. I don't think that they want to count this one as a runner. Potentially more keeping the heat in their tyres. But one person we will hop on with is, as they go through an invalidation and just decide, yep, nope, I am going to really just maximize my line for the next run, is going to be Yes Lad, as they cut through and they are going into the pits for a fresh set of tyres. About 4 or 5 laps is where you call it time on these intermediates before you have to go in for a fresh set, as well as potentially re-evaluating the strategy whether drivers go onto full wets. Although that being said, Flyboy and Liam are still on intermediates, so potentially are using those sets exclusively. It may not warrant it, despite looking really rather wet out there. Here we go, taking a look, saying it's an invalidation from Cass. What otherwise might have been a good time for them has been an invalidation, unfortunately. So we will have to check back in with them, as most of the drivers at this point are going in and swapping their tyres out, and it's really on the out laps now, so not really much to be reporting. Although Flyboy has just come off their out lap, and you can see blitzing down the start and finish straight, coming down to the first corner. How will they fare? They're braking just to the 100 board, managing the brakes very well. Doesn't lock up. That is a very clean line through the first section. And as we head into Sector 2, it's going to be a slight reduction on their previous time. So 1.5 tenths, which is going to put them in good stead. If they can keep that pace up, they will be in the 124s and they will join the top echelon of the grid. But here we go, as we start to see drivers pouring out of the pits now, completing their out laps and starting to get their second set of running in. So far, it's going to be Amir leading with a 124.189. Behind that, say about half a second behind, is going to be Rin, the Williams. Again, very new driver, but definitely showing their pace here at the Mexico circuit. And a 124.7. Cass is going to be the last driver so far to be in that 124 bracket, and really eking out those intermediate tyres, it has to be said, with a 124.983. They'll certainly have to consider going back in soon. But here we go, as Flyboy comes in, it's going to be a 124.769. It's only 64 milliseconds between themselves and their teammate, and is going to slot in very neatly in third place at that top half of the grid, and that's very good driving. Really, that Williams team is proving themselves to be a formidable force, and probably one of the strongest teams. While I'm not one to hedge bets, probably one of the strongest teams on the grid. From the brief showing we've seen, though they will have to prove that in their consistency, it is looking good. It is looking very good for the Williams suit. Taking a look around the rest of the field, we've got Liam coming through here, so just coming into the second sector. Very clean line through there. As we take it around the technical section, really just trying to maximize the grip of the car, because you cannot take any liberties when it comes to setting up your lines and your steering angle. You cannot take any liberties whatsoever, as well as when it comes to the snaking sections, because your grip is still limited. The rubber is not playing nice, and that is just going to be a little too much of a cut, and that's going to be a lap invalidation, unfortunately, for the AlphaTauri. Shame to see. That's a very tight grid. So it's going to be a slightly slower time than their previous for Lenny. A little bit of a shame there. Going to be Cass slowing right down. Not sure why they're continuing to use the same set of intermediates here. They really should have gone in earlier, I believe, in order to get as much running as possible. But there you go, missing their front wing. I think that's a good excuse for them to come in. And then taking a quick look at them. Yeah, definitely a good excuse to come in now. If I don't know... If that's not going to bring them in, I don't know what will. And then luckily that is our mystery driver. That is going to be Jelly joining in the session and having a good shot at potentially getting a good time in qualifying. So the only Alpine driver on the grid, with Coop managing the F2 League, having to bow out from this one, unfortunately. There we go. Here's what we call the optimal line. So taking the a new definition of the racing line, as Cass makes their way to the pits here to replace their front wing and get some new intermediates while they're at it. There we go, taking a look. It is going to be a 124.605 from Lenny is going to put themselves comfortably in third position, slotting themselves neatly between the two Williams drivers. And Rin is really closing in on the pace of Emir right about now. And say it's not, that gap has shrunk from about half a second to just over a tenth between the two. So it is down to the wire, and this is probably one of the closest packed grids in terms of pace that we have seen this entire season. In truth, this is probably the tightest packed grid that we've seen all season. As Jelly gets themselves prepared, is on their outlap now, has got very little time to get used to the wet weather. It will be a challenge for that Alpine to set a good time, but we can always have faith in them, and we do have faith in them here. There you go, Lenny is going to be getting very shaky, very bent out of shape as they get wobbly on the second sector, and that is going to be an invalidation. Unfortunate for the McLaren, but still holding a very good time. Although Yeslad has come in with a 124.431. Finally, they have got a valid lap, and that pace has paid off for the Alfa Romeo as they have slotted themselves firmly in third place. And given that we are coming to the last couple of minutes of qualifying now, it doesn't look like it's going to be much of a shake-up beyond this. So Emir is going to come out for one last run, it looks like, as they go to complete their outlap. Strangely, their teammate is absent from this time, which certainly is going to be a little bit of trouble in terms of the Constructors' Championship, as both the McLaren drivers have been consistently on the field and consistently getting points. So the Constructors is still anyone's game. There we go, very good driving, as we see the majority of the grid is now in that 124 territory. With the exception of, oh, and I believe Liam just got a 124.8, so it is literally Cameron and Jelly who are the only drivers not to be within the 124s right now. And one that we will be quickly taking a look at watching is Jelly here, who is going to be sadly on an invalidated lap, and that's really not what they need. They need to just get a bank in. They need to get a banker lap in at this point, because just even not setting a lap is worse than getting a, even if it is at the back of the grid time, they still should set a lap, or at least get a banker lap into the equation. But here we go, taking it round and taking it to the start-finish straight. That ghost tyre certainly spooking a lot of people out. which is not ideal, far from ideal to have some kind of debris, especially ghost debris on the track. Really not a welcome sight, but there you go, taking a very wide line. Cass is going to retire from the session with their 124.983, and Jelly is going to get an invalidation. That they are not going to be able to set a time this session. That is really unfortunate for the Alpine. They are going to start from the back of the grid along with Joshua, unfortunately. Really a big shame. It really is a shame. There we go, taking a look at just around the rest of the field. Wish we could get a finish position cam, exclusively start finish position, but there we go, the timer has officially concluded, and we will now start to see drivers rolling in and heading into the pits. So there we go. Say, is Cameron going to be able to set their time that they need? They are 2/10 up on their fastest. Are they going to be able to break into the 124s and join the rest of the grid? They've got the fastest second sector, although look to be taking a little too much of the curb going into sector 3 and coming up to the start finish straight. They're taking a good line through, getting a little bit hairy coming out, and as we go through the final corner, what time are we going to get? It's looking very clean from the second McLaren. It's going to be a 124.367. They are going to get in third place, and that is a brilliant starting position for our previous race winner. Although that being said, not to be outdone, Flyboy is going to come in with a 124.166. It is only 17 milliseconds between the Williams and the Mercedes. So really, we are seeing a battle of the sister teams up and down the grid here. We have Alfa Romeo sticking it to Ferrari. We have AlphaTauri putting up a good fight against Red Bull. And now we have Williams putting up a challenge on raw pace to the kings of the grid that are Mercedes right now. Brilliant showing from both of the Williams drivers, and brilliant showing for the entire grid as we close out qualifying here. Certainly probably one of our most exciting qualifying sessions yet. And as we wait for the timer to elapse, we have our final standings set in stone. The last driver to complete their running being Liam. We're just waiting for Liam to get their car into the pit wall, and that will be session concluded. But with two drivers retired, that is unfortunately going to be them starting at the back of the grid. But there we are. And in terms of your final standings, it is going to be the Flyboy in the Williams with a 124.166, showing some amazing pace in that car. And just edging out Amir with a 17 millisecond gap. Following that, we have Rin in the second Williams car with a 124.2, 124.3 from Cameron in the first McLaren, Yeslad in the Alfa Romeo, holding the team strong with a 0.4, Liam with a 0.5 in the AlphaTauri, very good pace being shown, and following that, we had Lenny and Cass nearing the back, along with, unfortunately, Jelly and Liam not getting a certification and starting from the back of the grid for this race. So those were your standings for the Mexico Grand Prix. Those were the starting standings. We will get ourselves into the race momentarily. It's going to be a dry race. So we had a wet qualifying, but it will be a dry race. And this will certainly generate some excitement. So again, anyone in the chat, do feel free to put up your predictions for who will be our race winner, as well as who you will think will cause any chaos up and down the track, whether there'll be safety cars. We'd love to hear your predictions and love to hear your thoughts down in the chat in the stream. And be sure to like the stream as well if you are enjoying the coverage and would like to see more of the season and to see the league thrive. But to reintroduce myself for anyone who has joined, anyone who is new and was not here at the start of qualifying, my name is Sappytron. I will be your commentator for this evening, for this race, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm a caster for both this league as well as the professional Forza scene, and it is, as always, a pleasure to be here and casting for you this evening. But there we go, as we get ourselves set up. There we go. Let's get ourselves set up with tyre strategy. We will hide all of our UI. We will get everything ready to go. And be sure, while we are getting ready for the race to go on, as our drivers set our formation lap and get the heat into their tyres, be sure to join us over on Twitter. Use the hashtag InvictusRL to get involved with the conversation. But we are seeing some definite variance in tyre strategy. So it's about half and half the grid is split between a soft strategy, so an early push strategy, and going for the mediums. So with the mediums gravitating more towards the back of the field. Alternate strategies haven't had the best of luck in this league so far, with namely the Alfa Tauris being almost the merchants of the alternate strategy, very frequently going onto the mediums where other drivers would take the softs. And with incidents on track and safety cars and otherwise extenuating circumstances, that has very seldom played off in their favour. But hopefully with the grid split half and half, we should see some exciting strategy, some exciting racing as we come to close out the formation lap. Flyboy really setting the pace, and you can see these drivers working as much into those tyres as they can. I say, hopefully this variance in strategy will pay off in some drivers' favour. So the Mexico circuit has been known for alternate strategies generally being favoured, rather than the early soft push that we are used to seeing or up and down the season. But there we go. That is all up for debate, and we're about to put to the test whether that is going to be true as we line up at the grid, get ourselves ready to go. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's lights out. We're going to hop on with our race leader. It's a good getaway for the Williams thus far. It's a brilliant getaway from Emir. As we hop on with them, they're going to quickly tuck behind. Going to have no choice. Get the slipstream right away. And it's going to be a big dive going into the first corner. Are we going to see any casualties? It's a big defensive move from Rin, keeping Cass well out of the equation. And Flyboy is going to retake the position from brilliant start from Emir. He's going to back off. Going to hold back. And Yes Lad doing very well to get into third position. And we are quickly already seeing some shuffling up and down the grid. Jelly and Liam quickly switching places, and we have a quick look around the middle of the grid. It's going to be side by side between the Alpine and the AlphaTauri. A little bit of contact there, and as we see there, say the tyre strategy variance could play off in favour, whether we see a medium hard one stop or potentially some other kind of running. But there we go. It's all to play for thus far. We can see Cass dropping to the back of the grid. As the medium tyres are starting to fall away to the superior pace of the soft compound. Quicker to heat, quicker to get the tyres up to temperature, and quicker to hold said temperature but also lose it. So in the early stages of the race, where you're working these tyres very, very hard to try and fight for positions and deal with the dirty air of the cars around you, these tyres can be all too susceptible to overheating, so that'll be something that the softs have to be careful. But setting the pace is going to be the Flyboy. They won 19.2, and we will see that race only improve. As we can see, hopping on with Emir here, we can see that the first three runners, the top three of Flyboy, Emir and Yes Lad, have sort of broken away from the rest of the pack. That gap has quickly grown in just the space of a single lap to around 2 seconds between Yes Lad and Cameron, who is running the medium compound. And both McLarens running the medium compound is something of note, because they will potentially have to double stack depending on the strategy in the race calls. They will definitely have to take that into consideration, both running the medium. So if there is a safety car, they will have to double stack, which will lose them time. Or if generally they have to pit in around the same time. You can see Flyboy not taking an optimal line, maybe some slight differences in setup here, as Emir is quickly closing in and not giving any room to breathe to the Williams. And even before DRS, they're making some challenges, but it looks like there's going to be a bit of an incident. Not really sure what happened there, but Rin has quickly fallen away. It doesn't look like there is much, if any, damage on the car. However, they've quickly fallen away from the pace, so it looks like they may potentially lost control or span out. And then Emir quickly breaking the pace with 117.7, showing that they are catching up to the Williams driver. We've just got the word from race control. DRS is now enabled. And we should start to see that factor into some of the battles. Start seeing some place trading happening very soon. But the grid is quickly partitioning. Liam and Jelly are also seemingly stuck in traffic, it looks like. They're stuck behind Lenny and Jelly, who has just got a time penalty, seemingly for track limit. That was an issue that we saw them dealing with in qualifying. So it's something that they will need to rein in, otherwise those penalties will very quickly stack up. But you can see that Liam has got the superior pace. They're very quickly closing in on the McLarens, but that roadblock, that papaya roadblock, is just refusing to let the AlphaTauri pass. And that really, the McLarens, that is the best job that they can do. They are faced against a superior tyre compound. They have a superior pace car behind them. And as we see, the DRS is now coming into effect. The DRS train is starting to form. You can really see that what has happened between the front of the grid, because Yeslad has made a bit of a dive, it seems, and has got away from Amir here. As we come to lap 4 now, DRS is going to factor in. Flyboy is going to go narrow and try to defend. Both drivers behind are going to go for the push. Flyboy is going to try and secure the inside line as we go into turn 1. Is going to get the hold, but is not going to have the pace to hold it. Yeslad is going to have the superior momentum, and they are going to come swinging out into first place and take the lead of the race thus far. It's brilliant driving. And they are going to get the DRS coming out, with Flyboy seemingly stuck in the middle. Although that being said, Yeslad quick to celebrate almost too much in their victory, as they just locked up and potentially have a little bit of flat spotting in their tyres that they'll have to monitor. But hopping back to the middle of the grid, we have again, Liam is stuck behind traffic here. They're stuck behind Cameron, and they really need to get past. Liam is on the superior compound. They need to maximize that pace. And at the moment, with the McLaren in front of them, they just cannot do that. And that also means that they're on the defense from Jelly in the Alpine. Really not a good place to be in for the soft runners. They needed to get out ahead of the medium compound and needed to do it quickly, and these two have seemingly not been able to do that, unfortunately. There you go. Heading back to the top of the grid is going to be a pass, a DRS pass from both Emir and Flyboy here. Going to hop up into first and second respectively. Are we going to see any more adventurous moves as we come out of the 3 corners? So it looks like to be very close between Emir and Yeslad. Yeslad is going to be left out of the DRS here, and Emir is going to pull away. We can see that top 3 at the top end of the grid just fighting and fighting. Ultimately, it is going to lose them time, but that being said, Flyboy did just get the fastest first sector. So really, just how much time are they actually losing? You can see Yeslad taking a very wide line, trying to minimize the dirty air from the cars in front. Really, one that I want to look out for right now is Cass, because we can see here that they are on the chase. They are quickly on the chase to the Alpine and AlphaTauri. They are not affected by this superior compound problem that the other 2 runners face. And given that they are stuck behind other medium runners, they have really made the most of the opportunity to make up time. So here we go, heading on to the start-finish straight. Flyboy going to set a 1:17.282, really hold the pace thus far. We're going to see a quick DRS pass between Emir and Flyboy, or are they going to be able to hold it? Doesn't look like it. But here we go, watching on through the mid-pack. It's very densely packed towards the center of the field right about now. You can really see just how much in each other's grills these drivers are, and how they are really just trying to make a push. Hopping on with Lenny, who was really dealing with nothing but clean air and potentially a defensive move. But even then, they have their teammate behind them who is doing the majority of the defensive work for them. At this point, all the McLarens need to do is just run a steady race. Don't worry too much about pace, because the deficit may potentially be made up later on. And it's going to be a Sector 2 incident. Flyboy is going to be DNF'd. What has happened? Oh, they're stuck right in the middle of the track. Right on the middle. What has happened to Flyboy here? They are out of the race. If only we had a replay that we can see what happened. But they may have had a collision, come into contact with either Yeslad or Romeo, or just simply got it out of line, because that's a very dangerous place to stop. I'm surprised that we didn't get a full safety car there. That is a very dangerous place to stop. They're right in the middle of the track. But regardless, it is going to be a DNF from Flyboy there. Really unfortunate. We've really struggled to say the Williams drivers have absolutely blistering pace, as we've seen, but so far haven't been able to hold a good finish, or at least both drivers have not been able to finish right where they've liked. Here we go, hopping on with Cameron now. In fact, we're going to switch over to Liam's perspective as the attacker, and really we're seeing a little bit of deja vu here. We are seeing that Liam, probably getting frustrated by this point, has fully lost the advantage of those soft tyres just from being stuck behind the McLarens. These soft tyres are starting to get on a little bit, and before long it will be time. Oh, big twitch there from the AlphaTauri, where you can see that they're starting to lose that grip advantage in the soft tyres, and sooner rather than later it will be a case of having to come in and really left themselves hanging out to dry. But it will be over the next few laps that we start to see at least some of the soft runners coming in for their pit stops. But between all of that fighting, that has left one driver on top, and of course it has been Emir, who has really taken advantage of the situation. Again, we are not fully sure what happened. Doesn't look to be any damage or on any of the cars involved that could indicate a collision. However, that loss of Flyboy, one of the major competitors in this three-way fight at the top, has resulted in Emir getting a real breakaway, and being out of the DRS range of Yeslad is going to certainly pay dividends, because they only have to worry about clean air and essentially hot lapping at this stage. They have a couple of laps to breathe, and you can see that they're really just swinging it through the second sector, taking the maximum amount of track and maximizing their lines to get really the best amount of pace that they can. One that we are going to hop on with now is Jelly, of course, the last place soft tyre runner. And surely they're going to be a little bit frustrated by now. So Rin is going to pick up a potentially track limits warning. But surely these two are very frustrated right about now with their situation, as it's going to be a... Oh my god, what has happened? As I say, there's going to be a full safety car. Yes, lad is out of the race. They have stopped right on track. They potentially hit the center reservation because they're in the middle of the track. And luckily, a lot of the drivers are quickly taking advantage of this and heading to the pit lane as soon as they can. Although, given that Emir was ahead of the safety car when the safety car was called and ahead of the pit exit, they are now fully unlapping themselves and potentially getting a free pit stop also. Really, unfortunately, we can't really see what happened there, which is a little bit of a shame. But as we take a look around the rest of the grid here, you can see that Cass has opted to go onto the hard compound, a very curious choice. And they will certainly be fighting in terms of keeping the grip in those tires and really just maximizing the pace. But could we potentially be seeing a one-stop strategy from the Aston Martin, or will they be swapping to a soft compound right at the end? I personally believe in the latter, as it will be a monumental task to eke those hard tires all the way to the end of the race. But we have yet to see. Some of these drivers really excel when it comes to tire management, and we may potentially see more of that at play here. Of course, we have drivers like Cameron who are renowned for maximizing their tires and getting the most out of it, be that endurance or outright pace, and being one of the almost hot lap merchants of the circuits that we've been onto thus far. So here we go, as all of the front runners are now taking their turn and going into the pits. Looks like the majority of them are going to be swapping out to another set of softs, with the exception of Jelly, who is going to go on to another set of mediums. A very curious choice, as we see them all come out here. It's a very peculiar choice. But with the gap that they had to the front of the pack, they have managed to preserve most of their positions. And in fact, we can see here that a little bit of a shake-up to the order has occurred. So everyone is on fresh rubber right about now. And as the safety cars officially departed and is leading the cars on track, you can see a little bit of a shake-up. So your standings as of current, we have Emir leading the race in first place, Lenny closely behind, followed by Liam, Jelly, Cass, Cameron, Rin, and Joshua, with Yeslad and Flyboy sadly being involved in incidents that put their cars out of the race with terminal damage. Although we have yet to determine the cause, I'm sure it will come out in steward's notes and will come out in racer submissions from POVs throughout the race and after, and we will hopefully get an opportunity to review those and take a look at some of the drivers' perspective. But there we go, a very short safety car period, given that they waited on track for a lap. They will be coming in essentially immediately after, really wasting no time in condensing the grip down and condensing down the field even. And will we potentially see a quick getaway? We're going to hop on with Lenny here, as Emir is going to sort of block and try and get the best getaway that they can and control the pace of the set out. But there we go, so he's dipping a little bit, getting a little bit wiggly, getting a little bit unsettled. But here we go, the race is officially back underway. Lenny is going to make full use of the slipstream, is going to take no nonsense. The McLaren sticking it to the Mercedes right about now. So it's a drag race to the first corner, but a surprise runner is going to be Liam, who's going to hold the inside. They're going to go side by side into turn one. It's going to be a... And what has happened to Cass? Cass is out of the session. What's happened to the Aston Martin is now going to be 3 DNFs. What is going on? Truly is some insanity going on track right about now. But we have had 3 DNFs and we are not even a third of the way through the race. So I'm really questioning as to what happened and what is going on with some of these drivers here today. But there we go. Lenny is going to hold the pace thus far. Really going to have to defend with their life, especially when DRS comes back online from race control. They need to maximize the gap that they have now to drivers like Leon and Emir, or fear that they will catch them back up on the DRS. They're doing very well so far. They've gained about half a second to the other drivers, showing some very good car control and maximizing of the lines here. And given that they have essentially a lap and a bit to get over a second, and they seem to have already done that to at least Liam, but Emir is not going to take that lightly and is going to have a little bit of a drag race with the AlphaTauri. He's going to hold the inside line as they get just a little bit of an extra charge heading into the first corner, and is going to brake much later. It's really going to stake their claim to the corner, having the inside line. Liam is going to have no choice but to yield, and Emir is going to take second place, and now the charge begins. So Liam doing very well to hold off the Mercedes up until this point. And of course now a question is, how are they managing their resources? Because Liam is on less than half of their energy and we are not even halfway into the race, whereas Emir, second place right now, but is doing very well in terms of their energy management. So really showing the differences, especially in setup and in some of the lines, just how beneficial that they can be into maximizing your car's time. And I'm not sure what has happened to Joshua though. One that we sort of slipped through the radar, has that Joshua is right back of the grid. They're almost in their own race. So we can't really say what happened, but it's definitely not what you want to be seeing, given that their teammate is fighting right at the top of the field. But there we go, DRS is now enabled. We're going to waste no time getting back to the front of the grid and starting to see some of the potential dives or risky overtakes. Emir is going to quickly tease. He's going to tease the McLaren, going to poke their nose in, but is going to dip back and say no and potentially wait for the DRS to reactivate. So looking behind, you can see Liam has started to fall away. They are outside of that 1 second range, so DRS is not going to be a boon for them unless they can make up that time pretty quickly. But one that we do need to watch is our previous race winner, Cameron, right about now, as they are on the chase to the Alpine. And let's take a little bit from their perspective, seeing what's going on as we head into the second sector. And really, this is a place where you lose a lot of time if you are behind another car. though the soft compound is definitely helping. If you are compound to compound, the drivers will be losing a lot of time. As you can see, Jelly covering off the corner very well, doing a very good job of defending, and from the McLaren. Even that with that tyre compound advantage, you can see now that Cameron is almost in the same position that Jelly found themselves in just a few laps prior. They are in the soft compound. They need to get past the slower compound runners, and they cannot do that. Although DRS is going to help them in this endeavour, is it going to be enough? Because so far Jelly is defending extremely well. So holding the inside, even with Cameron diving down the outside, is going to make a big dive, carry a lot of speed. And in fact, that is a really good move. They carried a lot of momentum, a lot of speed, had no choice but to yield, and is going to get the second DRS to solidify the move. Also, even with Jelly getting the slipstream, it is going to be the move locked in by the McLaren, and that was a very good showing. But we've seen the grid start to partition now. The grid has definitely partitioned into two pieces. We have the 1st to 4th place soft runners and the 5th to 7th runners in the mediums. Potentially this will see some payoffs in strategy, although we cannot say for certain. For anyone who is currently enjoying the stream, be sure to check out our Twitter. Be sure to join in the conversation, use the hashtag InvictusRL to stay updated on all things with the league, or just joining in the conversation. We typically have a lot of discussions over on there, so you'd be more than welcome to check us out on that side of things. And there we go, with a 1:15.2, Amir is setting the pace of the race thus far. And if we take a look, in fact, with the fastest laps, you can really see the differential in pace between, well, the Mercedes and the rest of the field, where everyone else is on 117s, 118s. The Mercedes is just in the 115s. It's almost in a league of its own, which is, I'll be brutally honest, it's almost scary. Just how much pace can be extracted out of that Mercedes, and really is a testament to both the drivers, the setup, and just the synergy between all of those elements coming together to make a good car and a good combo. So here we are. So in fact, we just take a quick look and a little bit of a glance. You can just see how much pace and how much speed they are carrying through that section. There we go. We're going to quickly tune in to the back of the field, as it looks to be a quick trading of positions between Rin and Jelly here. So making a move on the 3rd DRS section. Going to be interesting to see how Jelly responds. They have the DRS coming through to the next lap here, coming through the lap 16. They are half a second behind, but DRS is now open. Just how much of a difference is it going to make? They are charging quickly. Are they going to go for a dive? They're quickly closing in. They're going to hold the inside. Rin is not going to make a defensive move. Jelly is going to go on the inside, but Rin is going to have the superior pace coming out. Jelly taking a little bit more of the curve than they otherwise would have liked. But Jelly is also going to get the second DRS zone, is going to go for another attack. But Rin is going to hold the inside line in this instance. They're going to have to yield, or are they? So it looks like Jelly has made a good move, but Rin is far from out of fighting spirit yet. You're going to be a very, very wide running and a little bit of tail happiness from Jelly there, but eventually Jelly is going to lock in the move as we go into the second sector here. Is going to have to defend, however. Yeah, Jelly getting very, very wobbly here, and they lost that speed, and that's going to be all that Rin needs in order to get the position back. So really, some great back and forth that we're seeing from the middle of the grid. Was that a little bit of contact? Really some great fighting that we are seeing throughout. And it looks like this drive, these two drivers are going to be the battle of the track, at least for the time being, until we start to see those soft runners coming in once again. But again, hopping in with Jelly's POV, Rin is not going to go and dive on the inside to make a defensive move. Jelly is going to make the pass and then go back on to the outside line, really just try and carry as much pace as they possibly can. Is going to lock the move in, but they are also going to get the second DRS zone to really just set the pace. Although Rin is not going to give them any breathing room by any stretch. They are still just a few tenths behind, and that gap is not diminishing. that gap is not going to diminish, not without some serious effort by the Alpine driver to chase them off. And so we are looking around the rest of the grid here. We're going to hop on with Cameron, our previous race winner. One thing that we just need to take a look at is how all of the drivers are now spaced out, with the exception of Rin and Jelly. All of the drivers are spaced out to the point of where they cannot benefit from the DRS. So they might as well be hot lapping in their own private lobby at this point. Although Cameron is getting a little bit wobbly, maybe starting to show the age on those softs and how much that they can push them. But yeah, that being said, they are out of range of DRS, so they cannot benefit from that as a mechanic to gain to their rivals. The only one who really is the closest is Cameron, and even then they still have half a second to make up to Liam before they can make real effect of it. And they, of course, don't want to run afoul of driving penalties either from track limits. And there you go, Rin is going to now take the position of 5th place from Jelly, and is looking to be making a very good amount of headway. So they have really grown a little bit of a gap. It's almost already a second as we head into the S's of Sector 2, and that gap has in fact grown to pretty much a second, with Jelly having to deal with the dirty air and seemingly their own car also, as they have, continuing from both the times that we've seen them, they have been very wobbly. And yeah, that proven true with the gap that has grown, given that they are not in DRS range anymore. Although curiously, it looks like Jelly's driver model is running without a helmet, so very curious there. And certainly an interesting strategy for saving weight. I know that we have, in the 2022 season, been seeing some interesting ways that teams have shaved weight. Of course, Williams stripping most of the paint from their car. But removing the helmet is not an idea that I personally had in mind for reducing the curb weight also. Although that being said, who in the chat is excited for F1 22? I certainly am. Will certainly be some good opportunities, and you can bet that the league will be joining right along with. Here we go, taking a look around the rest of the grid. I'm going to hop on with our race leader, Amir, currently. In terms of your grid order, you have Amir in 1st place, holding a gap by about 3 seconds to Lenny. Liam in 3rd, Cameron in 4th. Rin in 5th place, being the fastest medium runner so far. Although we are coming up to the point where drivers will start to change over their tyres. So the soft runners are going to have to come into the pits very soon. They're going to start to run out of life on those soft tyres. But say 5th place in Rin. Jelly with 6th place, just picked up another penalty for track limit seemingly. And 7th place is going to be Joshua, about 30 seconds behind, owing to what we can only assume was an incident earlier in the race shortly after the safety car restart. In terms of DNFs, we've had a fair few incidents as we come over the halfway point of the race. So say we have 3 DNFs so far. We have Flyboy, Yes Lad, who both sadly suffered a incident and put their car out of the race with terminal damage, and Cass, who is still seemingly a mystery. And while we can look in the background, let's have a look. Oh, forgive me. Lost my focus for a second. No, but say no real fault of the driver's own. Say it seems to be a few issues. We were expecting a little bit of drama, in all fairness. We were expecting a little bit of drama being on a wet qualifying, and where our drivers are typically used to having conditions of the race be the same as quali, rather than them being flexible between them. Cass retired in the pits. Okay, all right, thank you for the info, oh Lily. Thank you for the info. Yeah, and looking back through some of the logs and the chat, it looks like they suffered a game glitch where they were forcibly under the pit limiter, which is a shame. It is always a shame to see someone retiring through no fault of their own. But hopping on quickly with, we're going to hop on with the battle between Jelly and Rin. Yeah, we have had a few retirements throughout this race, Say some of it being, say, collisions or just like losing traction and not getting control of the car when they needed to. And in the case of Cass, unfortunately suffering a game glitch. But as we were saying, you can see a lot of drivers potentially using qualifying as their run-ins. So to have qualifying in wet conditions in the race and the dry was certainly a big shake-up, and we were expecting a little bit of shakiness from our drivers. You can see Jelly, a little bit of a wobble coming through the S's there, as we have a gorgeous overhead view. You can hope to understand that those changes in conditions where you've just calibrated yourself as a driver, from a driver's perspective, if you calibrate yourself to a certain set of conditions and then those conditions change suddenly, and say if it's track evolution, if it's like the track rubbering up or getting a dry line, that is one thing. That is something that you can smoothly adapt to over the course of laps and over the course of time. But when it suddenly changes like this, and in fact we are seeing Liam, one of the first soft runners to switch onto the mediums now, from that front pack, is going to come out behind everyone else, so they will certainly have their work cut out for them. But yes, so from a driver's perspective, as a driver myself, I can say that when you have a sudden change in conditions that you can't smoothly adjust to, as with something like track evolution, degrading tyres, you do lose a little bit of that finesse, a little bit of that tact. And especially in the powerful cars like these and dealing with dirty air, having a complete change in conditions is going to cause some issues. And ultimately, with these cars, that's going to be the difference between either a high time and a low time, or even making it to the end of the race. So you can't really blame the drivers who have retired for retiring, because they do have a difficult job, and these are still extremely skilled drivers who are pushing it to the absolute limit. One mistake is fatal. And oh my god, what has happened to Rin there? What has happened? They completely spun out heading into the pit lane. Oh my god. And just completely caught me by surprise there. But luckily they did not impact the wall, it looks like, and didn't suffer any vehicle damage, but they completely lost it going into the pit lane. Oh, and minor correction, they do need a front wing replacement, but they are heading onto these soft tyres now. And there we go. Going on to the rest of the field here. Yeah, so that was a completely by surprise incident there. Now my real question for us here is, at this stage of the race, who do you see winning? Who do you see winning, chat? I would love to hear your opinions in the chat below as we head through and start to cross over into the last portion of the race. We're going to start to see the soft runners coming into the pits now. You can see Emir is the first place runner who is now going to pit in for a set of mediums. Lenny is going to opt to stay out, potentially to let their teammate go, but no, their teammate is also going to be staying out on the soft tyres. We may potentially see that double stacking from McLaren coming to pass. Hopefully not, as that will definitely put a detriment into their constructors fight. That will certainly be to their detriment, even with stable points from the both of them, and that will be against them. They will not be maximizing the points if they double stack like that. And it's going to be a safety car in sector 3. Not sure what's going a yellow flag, forgive me. Not a safety car, minor mistake. It's going to be a very brief yellow flag in sector 3. Do we see it coming together? I don't see any damage on the two cars, but it looks like they definitely got entangled in each other's space. But here we are. So as we see the two drivers charging down the start-finish straight, Rin is going to want to get past Joshua. Joshua is doing a very good job defending, and Rin is looks almost scared to get past here. Not sure what is going on, considering they have the clear advantage with old mediums versus brand new softs, and they have the DRS now, so potentially they were waiting for that chance. But now they seem to be letting off. I'm really curious as to what is going on with Rin here, because they have every opportunity to pass, and especially coming into the sector, they need to be ahead. They want to be ahead. So definitely questioning what their strategy is here. But there we go. Joshua is going to get a 3-second time penalty for track limits. One of many that has been served over the race thus far. Really just goes to show drivers how far they're willing to push in order to get themselves really the best position they can. Because you can see 14 laps on the softs now from the two McLarens. Really just showing how much they can eke out those tyres. We're starting to see some of the grain on them now. They really do look rather worn down. So they will have to come into the pits at some point soon. The only question is, who is going to go in first? Are they going to double stack? They really want to avoid that. And you can see the pace deficit has not worked in their favour because Emir, on new mediums, might I add, mediums, so a compound disadvantage, is very, very quickly catching up. We might potentially see Lenny going in first and a defensive manoeuvre being played by Cameron here and almost trying to slow down the pace of the previous race leader. But no, that's not going to be the case. Lenny is going to go on for a 15th lap and Cameron is going to be the one to go in. McLaren have a big enough gap for a double stack. They're 100% well, it looks like they are separating by a lap, and Lenny is really going to have to fight for his life on those almost bald softs by this point. 15 laps on the soft compounds. That is a big stretch. And I really cannot help but wonder how much time they are actually losing, whether it would have been worth pitting much earlier. You can see just with every passing corner how that deficit is closing, how it's waning 10th by 10th by 10th. Rin is going to save 115.3, a very good fastest lap, and using the clean air that they have, being in 6th place and 16 seconds behind the next driver, although very quickly closing in, might I add. Very quickly closing in. And Rin is going to then quickly see the other side of that with a 3-second time penalty. But yes, looking at the timesheet, Emir has gained about a second and a half just through that section alone. Lenny needs to come in now. And you can see that they are doing that here. You can, just by the wobble going into the pit lane, you can absolutely tell they are really just at the end of those tyres' life. And they really got everything that they could out of that compound. There we go. Ooh, a little bit of a lag there. But Emir is going to so far have the clean air. It looks like, oh, as we have a yellow flag in Sector 2, looks like Rin had a big off, a very, very big off, missing their front wing and coming off from a really far side of the track. So I think they lost traction and span out. But they're going to definitely not be happy. And they will have to come back into the pits. They might even have to fight with Joshua for 7th place. But not looking good for the second Williams driver. You can see even going wide of the white lines on the pit entry just goes to show how much. And that is going to be a retirement from Win. That is going to be both Williams drivers out of the session. Really is a shame to see such a high-paced team going into, well, they see, as you can see, they're just waiting in the pit lane. It really is a shame to see what looked like a very high-paced team essentially completely bailing out. And not in a derogatory kind of way or in any sense of the word, but really just having both drivers peel out. And Rin was the race finisher of the Williams team last time. Flyboy so far has not finished either race. And despite their blistering pace and just how much they can hot lap, in fact, we might have to start calling him Mr. Qualifying, but they cannot pull it together in the race, it looks like. The Williams team has absolutely astonishing pace over a one-lap distance, but cannot hold it together over a longer distance, which is really a shame. Because if you can string that together into race pace, they will have a serious championship contender. Even with just under half a season to go, they are by no means out of the fight. They can still make significant headway in the constructors to at least fight with the mid-pack with those consistent high performances if they put their mind to it. But there we go. With that all being said, it looks so far like a clean sweep for Emir, really back to top fighting form. and is going to quickly try and restart their P1 streak. A little bit of a wobble coming out of the start at the last corner. But you can see that the nearest competitor in Lenny, although they could potentially make it up with some ungodly driving, is still 13 seconds behind. And with 7 laps to go, 13 seconds is not the kind of pace you make up by pure compound advantage. And with the mediums on as well, and relatively fresh mediums, I don't see a big drop-off from Emir happening anytime soon. So we are potentially looking at the race order. The one to look at is Jelly, who on the mediums now, on 18 laps, so doing very well to manage those tyres, it looks like so far, but will definitely struggle towards the last few laps, because over 20 laps on the mediums is definitely going to start to show their weakness. So I am certainly curious to see how they will handle that and how they will come out on top, because you are flanked either side by soft compound drivers. Both McLarens are on the soft compound, and really the McLarens are doing astoundingly well in terms of their championship efforts. Say, as a constructor, they will quickly be catching up to Mercedes, even with Mia's pole position. If they can get second and third, they will be further ahead on points. They will be positive on points compared to the Mercedes, especially with Frederick, Emir's teammate, not being present for this Grand Prix. The championship in terms of constructors is really going to heat up going into the last few races of the season, so be sure to stick around for that. But just sticking with Jelly here, taking a look just at the pace difference as Cameron, coming up on fresher softs, and very fresh softs, only a few laps old, is quickly going to make up the pace to Jelly here. They're very quickly making up the pace, and you can see they are already within half a second. Brief error, mostly. But you can see just how quickly the soft compounds and the worn mediums, just the differential in pace alone through cornering. Lenny is going to quickly pick up a track limit penalty. Fortunate. But as I say, the game is lenient when it comes to track limit violations, so to really get a track limits violation on this track warrants some real pushing. But there we go. That is some brilliant defending from Jelly there. Really setting the inside line, even with the pace disadvantage, with the grip disadvantage, is doing really well to carry their car around the track and just show their dominance. But it's not going to be enough as Cameron comes through to the start-finish straight and is going to have the DRS to close the move out. Jelly, even with the slipstream, ultimately cannot fight against the fact that they have the inferior tyre, they have the more worn tyre, and they are not going to have the grip to reclaim that. DRS can only do so much to prevent the fact that they have vastly different levels of grip. You cannot account for that realistically. You can see already over a second behind. That move is done and dusted. There you go. Emir also picking up a 3-second track limit penalty. And even though Emir is relatively in the clear, they still need to push it. By no means can they rest. They have 5 laps to go. And if you rest on your laurels and cruise to the finish, that could still be the opportunity that someone like Lenny will need in order to make the most of the points. But here we go. So heading through, just from reading, looking at some of the internal commentary, it looks like Emir had even more to give. So reportedly, he was on a hot lap that was 4/10 up on what was his final time, let's say, which was within the 1:15.3. So we could have potentially seen in top form a 1:14, which is insane. It is absolutely insane. Also, I just wanted to briefly check and see and correct myself there if need be. Yes, so we could have seen a 1:14 on wet pace, which is astounding, which is blistering. So certainly be on the lookout for that. Say our current Drivers' Championship leader still apparently has more in the tank to give. And we'll hopefully see that coming to fruition throughout the last few laps and the last few races of the season. But we're going to hop on now with Liam, who is now going to be making an attack on Jelly here. Of course, Jelly on 21 lap old mediums. They are very brave eking out these mediums to the end of the race. At some point, you need to realize that the bigger compound and eking it out is not going to be worth the pace deficit. It's about that gamble, and in Formula 1 it always is a gamble. You can see Jelly going a very peculiar strategy. Big contact between the two drivers there. Potentially be looking at some damage, although it doesn't look like that visually. Jelly is going to get the DRS and is going to go on the retake. Is going to take the inside line and really try and cover off the AlphaTauri. AlphaTauri is going to go to maybe the inner line where Jelly has come back out. And really, you've got to maximize the momentum to get the most out of these cars and through the corners. As you can see, Joshua over almost a minute behind, and over a minute behind on the race leader. Really is in a race of their own, and in fact, Emir just got past Joshua right now and is was being blue flagged. So really just a question of, between these two drivers at this stage, between the Alpine and the AlphaTauri, just how long can Jelly defend before those tyres give out, before he loses more grip than he already has. It looks like now is going to be the time. Liam is going to get the DRS, is going to get the move on, get the move done, and it looks like that is firmly sealed to say they're ahead coming into the last sector, where Jelly has lost a lot of time with the pace deficit, with the grip deficit, but is going to have the DRS, so they may have got the move done, but can Liam hold it? And hop on with their POV now. Quickly look behind. You can see the rapidly approaching Alpine, but is it going to be enough heading into the first corner? Doesn't look like it as we head to the braking zone. Even with DRS and all the help we can get, and say as you get another track limits penalty, Liam being a little bit careful on the rotation, although Joshua is going to get a DNF. Joshua is going to get a DNF. Going to take a look from the McLaren POV. They completely lost it. They are in the wall and they have lost the wheel. They are terminally damaged and out of the race. Not what you want to see, with AlphaTauri being the only other team besides McLaren to have both drivers on the grid. The last thing you want is just on the last sector, on the last few laps, where Joshua really did not need to push. He did not need to push here, because it was so far behind, and not to be demeaning, but they were so far behind that no amount of push would have been able to regain the position. At that stage, all Joshua needed to do was bring the car home to secure points for themselves and the team, and it is really a shame to see them DNF in such a way, and so close to the race finish. But that is 5 DNFs. That is half of our grid DNF'd this race. This is insanity. Really goes to show the amount of shakeups that can happen when you have something like a wet quali and a dry race. Although it's not the only factor, it certainly wasn't attributing one by the looks of it. Hopping on with our race leader here by a comfortable margin, although the gap has shrunk between themselves and Lenny. The gap has shrunk to just over 8.5 seconds. It is not going to be enough. It is not going to be enough to constitute a fight for the race lead. We are not going to see a surprise McLaren winner, I don't believe, at least this time here in Mexico. But heading through here, we're going to see almost the, what at this point must feel like a parade lap for the Mercedes. Heading through, quickly hop on board. But really, we have to hand it to the Mercedes driver, to Emir here. While he is on his own, while he doesn't have his wingman with him in Frederick, it is still clear just how much consideration was put into things like setup, how much practice was put in. Say their qualifying times were nothing short of amazing, and that race, the race pace continued that trend. So heading through to the fastest lap, while Rin did get a 1:15.3, ultimately it is Emir in the 1:15s who has also managed to hold it together till the end of the race. But here we are, as we take a look at our race winner as it comes through. Just quickly, but as you can see them coming through to the last section of the track, you can see the grandstands lighting up in orange as they come through to the start finish line. Here's going to be your race winner. Emir Durakovic wins the Mexican Grand Prix, and that is going to be your race winner, taking their parade lap through the track. What a race this was. What an insane, exciting race that this was. Certainly one that kept you on the edge of your seat as you saw drivers dropping left and right in the start. Had a really good battle throughout between some of the mid-pack, but ultimately it was a really dominating show from the Mercedes, and a well-deserved victory, to be sure. Really just holding their cool, holding their pace, and that same goes for all of the 5 drivers who have made it to the end of the race distance. It almost became a battle of attrition here as all of the drivers made it through. But there we are. And Lenny is going to get a driver of the day, so very well done to the McLarens. And the McLarens getting some very good points today. Getting a very good finish, taking 2nd and 3rd on the podium. That is going to be great points for their Constructors drive. But there we go, that is going to be your race winner, celebrating on the podium. What a race. There we go, taking a look at the race winner. It's going to be a last-minute fastest lap from Jelly, taking 4 milliseconds off a Rin's time, which is brilliantly done. So that's going to secure a point for the Alpine team and for Jelly. Very good going. But your race winner, Emir Durakovic in the Mercedes, 1:15.723 fastest lap, and a very good final race time of 48 minutes and 8 seconds. Following that, you have the 2 McLarens, Lenny and Cameron. And then the AlphaTauri of Liam, the Alpine of Jelly, rounding off your race finishers. Sadly, Joshua did not finish the race, along with Rin, Cass Yeslad, and Flyboy, all being subjected to the trials and tribulations of the track or of the game itself, in Cass's case, unfortunately. But brilliant racing for all of the drivers involved. Just in case you weren't aware, I've been your commentator, Sappytron. You can also find me as well if you are interested in me personally. You can find me over on Twitch, where I cast for the professional Forza scene. And if you would like to join in on our endeavours here in the Invictus Racing League, be sure to check out places like our Twitter as well as our website, because you do not want to miss any of the action that is going on as we come over the halfway point of the season. We come to our last 5 races, so that is something you will definitely not want to miss. And next round is going to be at Imola, so really you do not want to miss what is about to go down as we head to the final 5. Just talking about it is making my heart race a little bit, and I hope that it is doing the same for you as well in the audience. So I would just like to say, first and foremost, thank you to everyone who has been watching today. It has been a brilliant race, certainly an exciting one, and as we head through to the final third of the season, the next round is going to be in Imola, so you be sure to join us same time next week for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. I've been Sappy, this has been the Invictus Racing League, and we will see you next week. Be sure to join us, join over the conversation on Twitter, like the stream if you enjoyed the coverage, and we will see you next time.